watching the trot from the left side. So the first thing we saw was that the horse literally jumps into the trot with the diagonal of the left hind right forelimb. And at the time when he does that, he becomes very tense with his neck extended and his thoracic and lumbar spine extended as well. And then he relaxes into the trot, holding his head and neck in a neutral position and relaxes his back as well. However, if we look at the thoracic spine and the thoracic cage, we can see that there's the shock absorption happening there between the shoulders, the scapula, and the withers is not equal on every stride. And I think that this reflects what we already saw in the walk, that he is rushing the diagonal of the right hind and left forelimb because he doesn't want to spend too much time on the other diagonal. Looking now at the pelvis and the lumbar spine. The lumbar spine seems to be okay, and it moves, it swings into flexion and extension, although it seems a little bit stiff. And going to the pelvis, again, there's a bit of a movement from side to side, but not significant. And again, this is happening because of the movement of the hind limbs. The left one has a smaller stance phase, and the right one is rushed to step on the ground a bit sooner, although there isn't a huge difference in the stride length of the two hind limbs. But because the right hind limb is rushed forward, it doesn't have the time to move under the horse's body, so it doesn't engage. And it does the same thing as we saw on the walk, it just pushes the body forward without really transmitting any power. Now the forelimbs, we saw the shoulder when we were talking about the movement of the spine. But again, on this view, the left shoulder seems that it cannot extend. It makes too much effort to take the weight from the hind limbs, that it doesn't extend as it should. And the whole movement happens from the scapula. And with every step, when the left forelimb touches the ground, we can see a lot of tension in the muscles, and that in mid-swing phase, the elbow is already extended and is ready to go down and touch the ground. And we can also see the concussion from the ground going up into the thoracic and cervical spine. Now looking at the horse from the right side, again we see that little jump to start off, and it's worth noting that he used the same diagonal of legs, the right hind and left fore, to start off. Then again he relaxes into the trot, and his cervical spine and his thoracic spine move into the rhythm of the trot, although we can see that his body, his rib cage sinks more between the forelimbs when the left one is on the ground. So when the right forelimb is on the ground, that makes his spine, his vertebrae rotate towards the right side. Now on the lumbar spine and the pelvis, we see this rhythmical flexion and extension, but it's not much. And he also uses some side bending and rotation to help his hind limbs move forward. Now the hind limbs, again we see the same pattern. The right one is rushed. There's no big difference in the length of the stride though, but again we can see that the horse cannot engage his hind limbs. And the same thing happening with the forelimbs. Again, the same diagonal is rushed a bit, but we can't really see any difference in the stride length. And now we're going to look at the horse trotting from behind. We see that the two sides of the pelvis don't move equally, and that the left side is dropping, and also that the tail is held to the right. Again, we see that the stifles turn out and the hocks turn in, so there's a bit of an external rotation at the level of the hip. Now, there's also accessory movement of the hocks, and again we can see that the right hind limb is stepping towards the midline, and when it does that we see that the hoof of the right hind limb is rotating externally. And finally we're going to see at the horse moving from the front. So that little jump again. We see again the head and neck in neutral, the barrel swinging from side to side. Can't really see the shoulders, but we see that the forelimbs move equally, but when they're in the air, they have the distal limbs have a paddling motion, and we can see that more on the right side, which means that it's probably rotating internally from the shoulder.